My name is Mike Pfeiffer. I've been a fitness coach for over 20 years, and in that time, I've helped thousands of hardworking people improve their health. And today, I'm going to help you. Today's topic is about motivation and trying to figure out for you what motivates you. So, I want to get into this a little bit about trying to find what moves the needle in your case. Everybody's got a little bit different way that they get motivated. So, most people are either going to be intellectually based or emotional based. So I'm going to go through the intellectual base first because that's what I know best and that's kind of what appeals to me. But I want to touch on the emotional piece just as much because it's just as critical. And everybody's going to fall in some spectrum between these two. So you got your IQ, right, and your EQ. And everybody's going to have like a 60-40 split, right? So, or a 40-60 split. Or in my case, they say speak what you know. I'm probably more like 80-20. So I'm probably 80-20 IQ to EQ. All right. So people that know me will tell you this, that sometimes I struggle on this side. I'm pretty sharp on this side. So in the IQ realm, it's more about knowledge, knowing something and knowing that if I do this, then this will occur, right? So it's more of a logical action and a thought process that you're thinking through. On the emotional side, it's more of an I feel that this will work, or I feel that I want to do this, or I want to do this for this reason. And I'll break those down a little bit more. So on the IQ side, the best determination of intelligence I ever heard was when you take in new information, the time it takes you to take action on that new information would be your IQ or your overall intelligence, right? So, anecdotally, about 2 years ago, I learned a lot more about alcohol and how it affects your health and how it affects your body and your hormones and your brain function and stuff. And basically determined that there was no positive benefit to alcohol aside from the social side of it, which from my perspective, my goal is health and living long and having a long quality of life, et cetera, right? For me personally. So I immediately, once I found that information, decided that I will never drink alcohol again, right? So I would consider that a high IQ move, right? Now I know that sounds a little, hoity-toity, but I make plenty of moves that are not high IQ moves, but right in that one particular instance, I was able to. So when you think about appealing to your intelligence, it's about knowing something and learning new information and how quickly you take action on that information. So if you consider yourself like I do, right, to be the 60-40 or 80-20 on the IQ realm, and that's kind of how you perceive yourself, and you like to think every decision you make, you're kind of putting through the ringer. So if it's calories, right, I'm doing the math all the time on, okay, I know about how many calories that is. I know about how many calories that is. I know what I've burned today. I'm going to look at my watch and see where I am. And I'm constantly thinking through all these moves without ever thinking, I want this. I need this. I feel this. I want to go do this because I don't feel good, right? That's just not really how I'm communicating with myself because I'm more on the 80-20 on this spectrum. So when I'm pursuing food, I'm constantly doing the math in my head and thinking, okay, did I balance my budget appropriately to add this in there, right? Am I going to go over on something with that? So if you've established yourself and the way that you perceive yourself and think about yourself is like an intelligent decider of things, right? A very thoughtful person with all your decisions, then I actually had a scenario a couple of years ago where a woman came to me and someone who I immensely respected, and I could tell right away very smart, very bright, very well educated, and was very proud of that. And it was very obvious, like she took her intellect very seriously. And there was no doubt, like she was smarter than I was, no question. So we sat down and she was struggling to lose weight and she had tried a bunch of different things over the years. And I asked her, I was like, well, you consider yourself, highly intelligent or above average intelligent? She said, yes, I do. I said, okay, if you're that intelligent and you think in things this way, shouldn't you be able to dictate every action that you take because you are going to decide everything that it does for you? You're not going to view it this way as things are happening to you. You're going to self-talk and say, I am making this choice. I'm intelligent enough to know that everything that's happening that I'm doing is a decision that I've made. And if I'm intelligent enough, I should be able to dictate those actions. And she paused for a second and looked at me and said, yes, you're right. I know what I need to do. I know what's going to get results. I know the things that are going to give me the progress that I want, and I'm choosing not to do them or not to do them at the level I need to get the results that I want. And if I consider myself an intelligent person, especially highly so in this case, then I should be able to make those decisions for myself. And there should be no doubt that if I choose, internally, like this is what I'm doing, that's the end of it. I don't need to think anymore. I don't need to act anymore. I don't need to go through any emotional roller coasters in that because I've used this to make those decisions for me, right? And I'm committed to that. And it probably took about 8 months, and she lost 75 pounds. Totally changed her look, changed her feel, changed her health. I mean, it was awesome. And I was able to appeal to her through that. Now, that may not be you, and we'll get to the other side of this later, but I think that you've got to figure out which of these two is most appropriate for you and really analyze trying to get healthier through that lens, right? I think a lot of people, when they think about improving their health or getting fitter or losing weight or getting stronger, they know the actions, but they're not really thinking through the decision making process, right? So, from a food standpoint, everything that goes in your mouth is a choice. It's not happening to you, right? Now, your emotions are playing a factor in how you're making those decisions, right? Which is why if you skew twos this way, maybe it won't be so difficult for you to make those different decisions. But none of it is happening randomly, right? You are choosing, whether it feels like a choice or not, you're making 1,000 micro decisions every second in your brain, no matter what you're doing, unless you're asleep. So these things are not happening randomly. You are making these conscious, semi-unconscious decisions slash choices to put the things in your mouth that are not getting you to your goals, or to not wake up early enough to make sure you go and you exercise, or when you get off work and you know you need to go do some cardio, choosing not to do it, right? They're all decisions. They are not things that are happening to you, right? So giving yourself agency, I think that's probably a good way to do it. If you have, I don't like to use the word high IQ because there are a lot of things that go into your decision making. So I don't really want to phrase it that way. But if you think through your life in this lens, you recognize you have agency in all the decisions that are around you. And that doesn't mean things aren't going to happen that you don't have control over, because it's absolutely going to happen, right? That's life. You don't always get to determine everything that happens around you. But 90% of the things that you do physically are in your control, right? So that's the IQ side. I hope that kind of makes sense what I'm getting at, and I'll tie these in a little bit more together. And then on the emotional side, and I'm going to guess the majority of people probably fall on the spectrum more. Um, and neither's wrong or right, right? There are times I wish I had a lot more of this, and people that know me probably wish I had a lot more of this, because I don't always approach situations with a good heart, not a bad heart, but I just don't always think about the feelings that other people are going to determine by what I do. And that's kind of a bummer, because I'm not trying to come at it in a bad way. I'm using this and just not considering this, right? And that doesn't usually end very well either. So you definitely got to combine these two at all times if you really want to lead to better actions, right? And actions in this sense are towards your health. So we'll determine those later. So on the emotional side, I feel or I want, you had a tough day at work and you get home and you're like, oh man, that was a really hard day. I am so tired. I don't want to think about, cooking or doing any of that work. Give me a drink and let's order in because I'm just exhausted. All right. That's more of an emotional thing. You definitely did stuff that was challenging that made you tired. I'm not trying to deny that. You were absolutely tired. So you have to think on an emotional level, is this temporary thing going to lead me to your health goals, right? So you've got to flip this a little bit to say, I feel tired. Like, let's acknowledge that you absolutely feel tired. I think a lot of people feel tired. And there are a lot of actions you can take to try to not feel tired, which I'll do some videos on that in the future on recovery and sleep and nutrition and that kind of stuff. But regardless, when you're having these emotional things, you're having this temporary need to make a decision, and typically a decision that is not congruent with improving your health, right? So you've got to figure out how to flip that a little bit and change that emotional response to, let's say, a likelihood of outcome that you want. So in this case, let's say you want to see your grandkids get older. Okay. Now, this is going to tie back to this a little bit, but when you're getting home and you're getting exhausted and you're with your kids and they're running around and things are going crazy and you're like, oh gosh, I just need a break. Give me a cookie, give me a drink. Let me just sit on the couch for a little bit, right? There's no denying that that is stressful and that is hard, right? But if you think long term, you feel that emotion and you say, okay, I'm feeling all these things, right? But what emotion do I ultimately want to be able to do is I want to be here when my kids and my grandkids get older. I want to see them grow up. I want to be a part of their lives, right? And if they're all running around and you're thinking very short term, right? Because this is temporary, your emotions are temporary, that's going to settle out, right? And that's going to back off. So you've got to either breathe through that and just don't make any actions, right? Let that emotional wave hit you, but then there's a reason they say just breathe, right? So take a minute there, let all that die down, and switch to this long-term view and attach an emotion to that. Be like, yeah, I'm tired right now and I want these things because they're going to make me feel better for a few minutes, but they're going to inhibit my ability to see my grandkids get older. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, right? That one cookie's not necessarily going to do that, but repeated actions over time where you're making that temporary decision that's leading to poor health is going to prevent you from being able to get there. So you've got to figure a way to tune that emotional response towards something more productive, towards your ultimate goal. So now that you understand a little bit about approaching it from an IQ or an EQ standpoint, let's make that a little less granular and let me show you a little bit about how that might make a little more sense in your day-to-day life. I thought about skipping over watching me erase the whiteboard, but they say action shots get people to engage with things. So here's your high intensity action of erasing a whiteboard. So next I want to go into, you got your IQ portion, which is the how, and your EQ portion, that is the why. And this doesn't necessarily just have to apply to your health. This could apply to a lot of things, but in this instance, right, that's what I know. That's the experience that I have. So that's what I'm trying to talk you through. But again, you need elements of both of these, right, to come in the middle. And everybody's got different proportions of those. But if you want to truly be successful with your health and achieve the best health outcome that you can, you're going to need both. As much as I like to think that I can operate purely like this, there's no way. I'm never going to be as successful if I don't kind of figure out some of these things, right? So the why, and all of you are going to have different whys, right? And this comes down to, those kind of corny health questionnaires you see, So why do you want to get healthy, right? So that's the question. And get healthy can mean a lot of things. It can mean losing weight. It can mean getting stronger. It can mean having better range of motion, more mobility, more bone density, right? There's a lot of things that can go into that health factor. It can be hormonal, trying to get your hormones in balance. Sorry about this really crappy handwriting here. People that know me make fun of my handwriting every day. I'm trying to do a little better on this whiteboard, but So we got into the why. So you need to figure out long-term, maybe you've got a wedding, right? So for some of you that might be on the younger scale, or like me going for round 2, right? So you might be doing that. It could be to hike. I like using this example because I've had a lot of people that have wanted to do really intense hikes. It could be seeing your grandkids be born, right? Depending on how old your children are and your current level of health. If you're really unhealthy and you have children that are young, you might not be there in 20, 30 years, right? If you don't take better care of yourself. And obviously there are things that can hit you that are, no matter what decisions you make, but for the most part, a lot of that's in your control. So if that's going to be a critical one, you love your family, you love having children, and you want a big family, and you really want to be a part of their lives as they get older, you're going to have to start taking steps, to get healthy. You can fill this in with whatever you want. It can even be heart health, right? So especially for men, a lot of times if you carry your weight around your waist, the beer belly, they call it. There's kind of a reason they call it that. But aesthetically, you want to look better and like fit your clothes better and all that stuff. And that's a very important sort of tangible benefit. But, this is a better way to look at it, because if your heart's not healthy and you have poor quality of life, these people or your kids are going to be taking care of you as you get older. And it's probably not a burden you want to put on them if you can help it, right? You get an accident, something happens, like, of course, you're going to have instances like that. But, maybe and this would be something for me, and I don't have children, but I don't want to be a burden on anyone around me. So I want to be as healthy as I can so nobody else has to take care of me or do things for me, because I've seen how hard that is on people. I've had experience through my own family, and it's tough. That takes a lot out of you, and it can really hurt relationships. So when I think of my overall health, like, I don't want to place a burden on anybody because I'm not taking good care of myself, right? That shouldn't be anybody else's responsibility but mine, right? And that's more of an emotional appeal. So, you got a couple of these, you could probably fill out 100 things on this list, but I think you, especially if this is your 60 or 80% here, you really need to figure this out for yourself, because that's going to be your consistent, like, North Star on the decisions that you're trying to make with your health. And I would try to, maybe it's more than one thing, but I would try to fine tune this as much as you can to your, top three, top one, if there is one that really, really stands out. Um, Example for me, like, my grandmother died of pancreatic cancer. So, as much as I know about the pancreas, I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be, but I knew that insulin was the enemy, right? Not only for how much your pancreas works, but also how it affects your blood sugar, how it affects cancer growth, and all that. So that happened to me when I was 16, and that became a guiding light for me to be low glycemic, right? I've gone through ketogenic phases as well, but the backbone of all of that is all the carbohydrates that I eat 90% of the time are low glycemic. Now, everybody should do that anyway. There are health reasons for that. But this, and my grandmother passing away, and understanding how the pancreas works and its play in your blood sugar, was a huge decision mover for me. And even me, that, I consider myself an 80/20. I mean, that really, at a young age, set that into me. I went through Atkins because I associated that together, and Atkins was popular at the time. So that's kind of what got the ball rolling for me. Um, so I really think honing in on this for you will help you sustain your decisions towards what you're trying to do. We've sort of established the why, and hopefully you're able to hone in on a few things that really, really move you and are important to you, and, are a high value to you. So now is the how. And this is why most people come see a trainer, right? And this is kind of how I started. I've been doing this 20 years. I've been trying to help people with this information, right? But I've realized, as I've been doing this a long time, I can give all the X's and O's, right? I can give you the playbook, but if we don't establish some of this stuff, you may not take action the way that you know that you should, or that I've tried to teach you how to do, right? So figuring out the how, and that can be different. We'll kind of go through these. So wedding, it's losing weight, right? I'm assuming, right? You could want to bulk up to, like, jack out in your tux or something, but for the majority of people, it's lose weight. All right, so that's move more, eat less, right? Kind of your basic instinct to do that. But then you can get into macros, you can get into fat loss, not weight loss. Yes, those are two different things. And then you would seek someone out on how to do those things, right? If it's hiking, then you would see someone on plane, right? I recently had a scenario where someone was hiking, and I estimated the amount of distance that they would cover while they were on their hike. And we're talking like an 8-day hike, right? Not a short thing. And then ultimately, they needed to be able to do, I forget all the numbers off the top of my head, but let's say it was, 34,000 steps per day or something. It's like, all right, so I can use that, and I can build out a plan to build your tolerance up to that. You're going to have a weighted pack, so it might be a 20-pound pack. So we need to get your body strong enough and sturdy enough, for your core strong enough to do that. All right, so you come in, and I help you put this plan together. If you want to watch your grandkids be born, then it's a longevity play, right? So then you need to find someone to help you build a plan for longevity, which is there's a lot of things to that, but strength training 2 to 4 times a week, making sure you're increasing your bone density through that training program, doing heart health cardiovascular work, which we'll go into this too, which is 60 to 90 minutes of zone 2, 3 cardio, and then 5 to 10 minutes of high intensity zone 5 cardio per week for optimal heart health, right? And then you've got mobility in that because you want to be able to, go play soccer with your grandkids and do that kind of thing. And then the last one would be burden. There are a couple things you could do this, like long-term care, right? Financial security, making sure that, I've set myself up in position to where when I start to pass or start to have health problems or start to age, I've got all these things kind of coordinated. And so people don't have to do that for me or figuring it out for me. This is also going to be in here, right? I don't want to be a burden to anybody else. So I'm going to work on that longevity piece and making sure my heart's healthy, my bones are healthy, my lungs are healthy, my body's healthy, my joints have their range of motion, I'm able to get up and down off the floor, et cetera, right? So going back to all of this, right? Figuring out, what your primary modus operandi is, right? Like, how do you perceive the world? Do you react to things emotionally more often? Do you react to things, rationally or logically more often? No right or wrong, just figuring out how you do it. And then trying to marry the two and trying to figure out, how you can change these things towards actions and coalesce these two things to help you get healthy.